Hi everyone, welcome to today's NAV Know-How. We're going to be covering 2009 RTC, how to create a test database, how to load objects. We're going to talk about the import worksheet, a few best practices, and we'll touch on the service tier. It'll all make sense in a few minutes. Okay, so let's get started. So this will be applicable for all role-tailored clients for 2009 R2, 2009 SP1, and 2009. It will look something like this, your nav, hopefully. So we're going to use a demo database today. So we're going to assume, pretend, this is my live environment, demo database nav 60. And that is essentially this thing here. This is my live. And if we look at it in the SQL Server Management Studio, we can see it here as well. Okay, so what we're going to do, we're going to take a backup of our live database. So you'll need to log into your SQL Server Management Studio on your SQL Server. For this demonstration, it's all done on my local PC. Okay, so open the SQL Server Management Studio. Log in. You should be a DBO or sysadmin or whatever your IT guys give you, and we are going to back up our database. So you right click the database you want to back up, tasks, backup. We're going to have some options here. It's going to tell it's going to ask us where we want to save it to. So we're going to add a new location in our folder, file system. I'll put it into ctemp. I'll call it test nav1. I can put the extension on, I'll just do it, but it doesn't really matter. We'll back that up, and we can see down here the progress of it. So if we go and have a look in the folder, we'll be able to see our backup now. Ctemp test nav1, and the date modified 1032. Okay. So we're now going to make a new database using this backup, which is a copy of our live. So we're going to do database, restore database. Okay, so if we go and grab our device, I'm going to go and look for our backup file, which is in ctemp, testnav1. Okay. Okay. So it's picked up the backup set, the restore set. With destination, we're not going to overwrite our live. That would be terrible. So we need to make sure it's a unique name. So we'll call it testnav. We're going to check what the files are going to be called in on your server, because the SQL database is made up of your logs and your data files. So I'm just going to make them unique. And we're going to turn off tail log backup. So this will create a new database in our list here. So just give it a moment. Okay, so there's a copy of our live database, but we've called it our test database. Okay, so we can let's just check we can actually get into it. So if we go back to our classic client, and this is the client where you would do your administration on the back end, like your objects and your licenses, and your users as well in this version. If we go and drill down into the SQL Server, we can now see we've got this new test database, testnav. So if we try and get into that, because it's a carbon copy, all the users should come across. I think there's only one user in there, which is me, and it's got all the same permissions. It would be different if you had a different SQL Server. So if you had a live SQL Server and test one, which some people do, that might be a little bit different. But in this scenario, it's all done on the same SQL Server. We're going to copy the database and store it in the same box. Okay, but this still doesn't let us access it via the role-tailored client, and that's because in 2009 R2 and 2009 that use the role-tailored client, you have to have a service which allows the role-tailored clients to connect to the database. So I've already made a test service, but I'll show you where it resides. So on your nav server, wherever that is, you should already have a test service set up. If you don't, you can easily set one up using, there's a whole bunch of tools on the internet, like service tier administration. So I'll put the link in the video online once I've done this, but you can actually go and download it from mybuso.com if you just type in nav service tier administration. And that's a tool that lets you create new services on your nav server. So I've already made them. So if I show you my live service, which is here, this one here, and this client connects in using this string, and that's being published through this service. But we want to connect our SQL database to our new nav service, which is here. So if you go into services.msc, just to show you how to get into that simply, so if you go to your nav server, you can go find it, services.msc, and you go to your test service. So I've called mine nav server. In here, you can find out where the configuration file sits for it. If you just right click on it and do properties, I know that the config file for the service is here. So if we go in, we can see it's got a bunch of executables. They can't be run in the normal way, they are service files. But there is a config file, customsettings.config, and in here we can point to what database to use. So this is where you would say, this is my SQL server, which is, for me, it's localhost, but you'd have to put in your database server. Database name is testnav, so if we have a look on here, testnav. Server instance, that's going to form part of our connection string, and that's the ports we want it to run on. I've used 7048, 7049 because I know they're free. So as long as they don't clash with your live ports, the default ports are 7046 and 7047, so just make sure they're different. And if you're unsure, you can speak to your IT department and they'll tell you what ports are available. So I'll save the config file, and then if we go turn on the service, it should go and allow us to access it using the RoleTailor client. Okay, so it has turned on. Now if we go to the event viewer, we can actually see what the string is. I know what the string is. It should be localhost 7048. Okay, so if I've made the test service. Here it is. I've turned it on, and if we go and look in the event viewer, it will tell us straight away what the connection string is for the new service. So if I refresh this, it's gone and told me it's my computer name, the port, and the server instance for nav. And if we paste this in, we can now connect to our test database. So let's kick that off and go have a look while that loads. Okay, there it is. So that is running. So this connection string is running on this service here, and this service here is connected to my test database, and that's mirrored for my live. So if we go look at my live service, here it is. That's connected to my live database, and I can connect to it using my live connection string, which is this one here. Okay, so now we've got a test and a live database. What we can do is we can now load some objects into our test database. So we would do this through the classic client. So everyone should have a classic client on their nav server, or you should have it on your local PC. You can be on any machine. So let's open the classic client. File database open. We're going to go find our test database, which is testnav. We'll open up a company. Because I'm just working with Cronus, which is a demo database from Microsoft. We'll open up the object designer, which is tools, object designer, or Shift F12. And in here, we can load a new object in by doing import. So as soon as you go into the object designer, you get a whole new set of options in the file tab at the top. So if we import, go to find our import object, and for me it's just an order confirmation report, and it says it's found a conflict. So it's saying, do you want to open the import worksheet? So yes, I do. And this import worksheet tells you if there's any conflicts found, what the differences are in terms of version lists, the date modified. So I think it knows it's from the date modified hasn't changed, and neither has the version list, but it thinks there's a difference in the object. I think I might have. I think it's because it's from a different database. But let's as default, if you always do replace all, because sometimes if there is an actual conflict, it may give you these options like merge, and don't unless told specifically don't do that. Always do replace all. So if you click replace all and then do OK, that will just overwrite the object completely, which is typically what we'd always recommend unless otherwise specified. Let me show you another example of this. So we'll go into our live database here. We'll open up a company and we'll go to our object designer. We'll export a report, but we'll change it even more. We'll do some more changes on it. So I'll quickly just add some more documentation and save that. I'll also change the version list as well. I'll just say Meta 001. But if you made a change, you could always put your own documentation in here in your version list. Now we can export the object, so you can either highlight the objects and do File and Export, or if you want to, you could do a range of objects like 205.215, and we could export all of these. File, Export, and we'll just do Export Objects 205 to 215. And then we can go and import them into our test database. I mean, you shouldn't ever make changes in your live. This is my example, but I'm just trying to explain how exporting and importing works. If we go into our test database and we import that object we just made, which is this one, it says, okay, do you want to open the import worksheet? It's detected some conflicts. Sometimes that message won't show if it doesn't see any relevant conflicts. It says all of these are the same. There's been no change between them. If you look at the version list, they're all exactly the same, and the date modified between them, if we compare the existing and the new, there's no change. If we go up to our top object where I actually made a code change, we can see that the original object was modified this morning at 9:39, but the new object is modified 2 minutes ago at 10:43. So I'm happy that that is what I expect. We'll just do replace all, just to it's always good practice to do that, and then do OK. It will then overwrite all our objects. So now when we go into our test database with our new service, that object will show up in our rotator client, and we'll be able to test on it, and we can make any changes in the test database and not fear about breaking anything in the live database. So just to review what we've done, we've created a test system using the SQL Server Management Studio. So we backed up our live, and then we restored it as test nav using restore database. Then we connected it to a test service, which you should already have set up. But if you don't, you can always contact us and we'll help you, or you can do it yourself using the service administration tool. I'll put the link in the video. Okay, once we've done that and we've made sure we can connect to our test database, we've opened up the classic client and we've imported objects using the import worksheet, and we viewed how to detect if there's any conflicts or if there is any overwrites. And generally there will always be overwrites because, for example, we wouldn't release something to our customers unless there'd been a change to the object. So replaceable is is something to take away from that. If you've got any questions, you can ask them now if you like. Otherwise, I'll be putting this on the internet with some links, and you can view it at your own leisure. So yeah, just let me know if you have any questions. Thank you.